It's late at night. You're lying in bed, half tired, half anxious, doing that thing most of us do when we know we should be sleeping. But our brain won't shut off, so you open your phone, you scroll for a few minutes, and almost immediately, you run into one of those videos. Some guy in a luxury apartment saying he became financially free by 27. Or someone claiming they built a 6-figure portfolio in 2 years. Or maybe it's one of those posts that says, if you're not making money in your sleep, you're falling behind. And even if you know some of it is exaggerated, it still gets to you. Because for a second, you start wondering if you're doing life wrong. You work hard. You try to be responsible. You're not out here making insane mistakes every day. And yet, when you look at your bank account, your savings, your investments, if you even have any, it doesn't exactly feel like real wealth is on the horizon. It feels more like survival with occasional progress. Like you're doing your best, but somehow the finish line keeps moving. And that's where a lot of people start to lose hope, because the financial advice online usually falls into 2 categories. And honestly, both of them are kind of useless for the average person. On one side, you've got the fantasy version. Flip this. Trade that. Buy this coin before it explodes. Start a side hustle in 1 weekend. Scale faster. Make your first million by next summer. It sounds exciting, but deep down, most people know that advice is built for clicks, not reality. And on the other side, you've got the painfully slow version. Just save a little, invest a little, wait 35 to 40 years. And maybe one day, when your knees hurt and your energy is gone, you'll finally have enough money to breathe. That's not exactly inspiring either. So people end up stuck between 2 bad options. One path is unrealistic. The other is technically smart but emotionally dead. And when those are the only 2 options you see, wealth starts to feel like something reserved for other people. People who got lucky earlier. People who had rich parents. People who knew some secret you somehow missed. But here's the truth most people never hear clearly enough. Building real wealth does not usually happen in 1 year, but it also does not require your entire lifetime to start feeling meaningful. 5 years, if used properly, is enough time to completely change your financial trajectory. Not to become a billionaire, not to fake being rich online, not to rent a Lamborghini for a thumbnail, but to build actual wealth. The kind that lowers stress, the kind that gives you options, the kind that changes how you make decisions because you're no longer operating from panic all the time. And that's what this is really about. This is not a fantasy plan. This is not a become rich overnight script. This is a realistic 5-year roadmap for building wealth in a way that normal people can actually follow. If you're willing to think longer than 5 weeks, but shorter than 40 years, this is where the game starts to get interesting. Because once you understand what actually builds wealth first 5 years, your whole approach to money changes. And the first thing you need to understand is this. Wealth is not built by investing first, it's built by creating financial capacity first. That might sound surprising, especially because so much financial content jumps straight into what stocks to buy, which ETF to hold, how to diversify, how to rebalance, how to optimize tax efficiency. And yes, those things matter. But they matter a lot more after you've built the engine. Most people are obsessing over the steering wheel while driving a car with no horsepower. Let me explain. If someone earns just enough to cover rent, food, transportation, bills, and a little bit of entertainment, then technically, yes, they should budget better. Yes, they should avoid debt traps. Yes, they should start investing early. But let's be honest about the math. If you only have a tiny amount left at the end of each month, then even perfect financial discipline won't create dramatic results quickly. Imagine someone saves $200 a month. That's respectable. A lot of people don't even manage that consistently. Over 1 year, that's $2,400. Over 5 years, that's $12,000 before growth. If invested well, maybe it becomes a bit more than that. Good? Absolutely. Life-changing? Not really. Now compare that to someone who increases their income by $1,500 over a few and still lives below their means. Suddenly, they can invest $700, $1,000 even once, $500 a month. Now you're playing a completely different game. This is why the biggest wealth breakthrough for most people in the first 5 years does not come from finding a magical investment. It comes from increasing the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is everything. That gap is what funds your savings. That gap is what funds your investments. That gap is what buys your freedom. That gap is what protects you from emergencies. That gap is what turns time into an ally instead of a threat. And if your gap is too small, then no amount of financial content is going to feel powerful. Because you'll still be trying to build a future using leftover crumbs from an already stretched life. So the first major shift is mental. Stop asking, what should I invest in first? Start asking, how do I create enough margin for wealth to actually grow? That question is far more powerful, and it leads to the first step, step 1. Increase your income aggressively in the first 2 years. Notice I didn't say magically. I said aggressively. There's a difference. Aggressive doesn't mean reckless. It doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow to follow your passion with no plan. It means treating your earning power like your number one financial project. Because in the beginning, your income matters more than your investing skill. Think about it like this. If you had a business making only a tiny profit, what would matter more in the early stages? Saving pennies on office supplies or doubling sales? The answer is obvious. Yet when it comes to personal finance, people do the opposite. They spend all their energy trying to save a little more, cut one more subscription, skip one more coffee, and while discipline matters, there's a ceiling to how much you can cut. But there's a much higher ceiling to how much you can earn. That is where real wealth starts. For some people, increasing income means switching jobs. For others, it means developing a higher value skill. For some, it means moving into sales, tech, consulting, freelancing, content design, marketing, operations, or a trade that pays better. For others, it means finally asking for the raise they should have asked for a year ago. And for many people, it means building a small side income that can grow into something meaningful over time. The specific path can differ. The principle does not. Your ability to earn more is one of the highest return investments available to you in the early stage of wealth building. And here's the part people underestimate. 5 years is a long time when it's used intentionally. In 5 years you can go from underpaid to well-paid. In 5 years you can go from no side income to a meaningful second stream. In 5 years you can become the person companies compete for instead of the person hoping they'll reply. In 5 years, your income can genuinely look nothing like it does today. But only if you stop treating income growth like a bonus and start treating it like a mission. Now, this is where most people nod their head and say, yeah, I should earn more. But then nothing changes. Why? Because earn more is too vague. So let's make it practical. If your goal is to build real wealth in 5 years, your first target is not net worth. Your first target is to increase your monthly surplus. That means one simple question. After all your essential expenses, how much money can you consistently keep each month? If the answer is almost nothing, then your first wealth goal is not investing harder. It is increasing that number. Maybe from $200 to $500. Maybe from $500 to $1,000. Maybe from... Because when that number grows, everything changes. And the best way to grow it is usually a combination of 3 things. Increase your main income. Add a second income stream if possible. And do not let your lifestyle grow as fast as your earnings. That last part is where people destroy their own progress. Because step 2 is not sexy, but it's absolutely critical. Step 2. Control lifestyle's inflation like your future depends on it, because it does. This is the part almost nobody talks about honestly enough. A raise does not make you wealthier by itself. A raise only creates the opportunity to become wealthier. Whether that opportunity becomes real depends entirely on what you do next. Let's say you start making more money. Maybe not crazy money. Just more than before. At first, it feels amazing. You breathe easier. You feel like things are finally moving. And then slowly, quietly, your life begins to expand. Maybe you upgrade your apartment. Maybe you start ordering out more. Maybe your car suddenly feels too basic. Maybe you convince yourself that because you work hard, you deserve to spend more freely. And look, to some extent, that's true. You should enjoy your life. This is not about becoming a robot. This is not about hoarding money in a dark room and never having fun. But if every increase in income immediately turns into an increase in lifestyle, then financially, you're running on a treadmill. You feel faster, but you're not actually moving. This is one of the main reasons people with decent incomes still feel broke. Their problem is not always income. Their problem is that every new level of earning creates a new level of spending. And the brain adapts frighteningly fast. The nicer place becomes normal. The more expensive routine becomes normal. The upgraded lifestyle becomes normal. Then suddenly, what once felt like success now feels basic. And once basic gets redefined upward, saving starts to feel like sacrifice again. That is why one of the best rules you can follow in your first 5 years is this. Every time your income goes up, automatically lock away a meaningful portion of the increase, not what's left over. Not whatever you feel like saving. A fixed portion. You could save half of every raise, or 60% of every bonus, or the entire amount from side income for the first year. The exact rule matters less than the principle. Your lifestyle should rise more slowly than your income. That gap is where wealth is born. Let's say you get a $1,000 monthly raise. If all of it disappears into higher spending, your financial life barely changes. But if you direct $600 of that toward investing, savings, debt elimination, or business building, then one raise can permanently change your trajectory. Now multiply that across several income increases over 5 years. This is how ordinary people quietly become financially strong, while everyone else is busy looking rich. Real wealth often grows in private before it becomes visible. And that's important to remember, because social media trains you to respect appearance more than actual progress. The expensive car gets attention. The luxury vacation gets attention. The branded lifestyle gets attention, but net worth doesn't usually announce itself. Discipline is quiet. Investing is quiet. Emergency funds are quiet. Debt freedom is quiet. Owning your time is quiet. Until one day, it isn't. The person who looked behind is suddenly the one with options. That's the game now. Once you start increasing income and protecting the gap between earnings and spending, then we move to step 3. Step 3, build a financial base before you chase big returns. This is where people often get impatient, because once someone starts taking money seriously, they want that money to grow fast, and that's understandable. But impatience is expensive, especially in finance. Before you start trying to maximize returns, you need stability, because unstable people make unstable money decisions. If one emergency can wipe you out, you're not really in a position to think long-term yet. So before wealth can scale, you need a foundation. That foundation usually has 3 parts. First, a cash buffer. Second, high-interest debt control. Third, basic investing consistency. Let's break that down. A cash buffer matters because emergencies are not rare, they're guaranteed. Something will happen: a medical bill, a family issue, car trouble, job loss, a surprise relocation, a broken device you need for work. If every unexpected event forces you into debt or forces you to sell investments, then your wealth building process keeps getting reset. That's why a basic emergency fund is not boring. It's strategic. It protects momentum. Then there's debt. Not all debt is equally destructive, but high-interest consumer debt is one of the biggest wealth killers in existence. Because if your money is earning 8 or 10% somewhere, but your debt is charging 24 or 30% somewhere else, you're not building, you're leaking, and leaks destroy ships slowly. A lot of people want to invest and pay off debt later because investing feels exciting and debt repayment feels boring. But wealth is not built on emotional excitement. It's built on math and behaviors. If something is draining your financial life at a high rate, fixing that is often one of the best returns available. Then, once your base is stable enough, you start investing consistently. Notice that word. Consistently, not brilliantly, not perfectly, consistently. Because in the real world, consistency beats intensity more often than people think. You do not need to predict the next big winner. You do not need to trade every week. You do not need to build a personality around market opinions. You need a process you can stick to. For most people, wealth grows from repeated contributions into productive long-term assets, not from dramatic moves. And this is where the idea of 5 years gets powerful. Because 5 years of consistency can create a level of momentum that feels completely different from where you started. Imagine someone who, after improving income and controlling lifestyle, is able to invest $1,200 per month consistently. That's $14,400 a year. Over 5 years, that's $72,000 contributed before growth. Now add reasonable compounding, and suddenly they're not trying to get started anymore. They've built real mass, real momentum, real proof, and perhaps even more importantly, they've become the kind of person who knows how to keep doing it. That identity shift matters more than most people realize, because wealth isn't just about what you own, it's about what kind of person you've become. A person who can delay gratification. A person who can think in years, not weekends. A person who can make more, keep more, and multiply more. A person who is no longer controlled by every short-term urge. That transformation is worth a lot. Now let's talk about the mistake that ruins this process for smart people. Step 4. Stop confusing activity with progress. This one is dangerous because it looks productive on the surface. You watch finance videos. You compare apps. You research investments. You debate whether this market is overvalued. You keep waiting for the perfect time. You learn terminology. You build spreadsheets. You consume endless information. And meanwhile, months go by without consistent execution. This happens because being interested in wealth feels similar to building wealth, but they are not the same thing. Knowledge matters, yes, but applied knowledge matters far more. You don't build wealth from financial entertainment. You build wealth from repeated financial behavior. That means the person who invests a modest amount every month for 5 years usually ends up ahead of the person who spent those same 5 years looking for the most optimized plan but rarely acting. Perfectionism delays more wealth than ignorance ever will, because the truth is, you don't need a flawless plan. You need a durable one, a plan that works when you're busy, a plan that works when motivation is low, a plan that works when the market feels scary, a plan that works when life gets messy. That's the kind of plan that changes your future. And that's why simplicity often wins. Not because complicated strategies never work, but because simple strategies are easier to repeat for long enough to matter. And long enough to matter is where most of the reward lives. Now, there's another truth people don't like hearing, but it's crucial if you want real wealth in 5 years. Step 5. Your circle, habits, and identity affect your finances more than you think. People often try to build wealth while staying loyal to a lifestyle that keeps them poor. They say they want financial freedom, but their habits are built around instant gratification. They say they want peace, but their spending is driven by image. They say they want to get ahead, but they copy people who are financially performative, not financially solid. You cannot build a different financial future while worshiping the same patterns that created your current one. At some points, wealth building becomes less about money itself and more about emotional maturity. Can you resist buying things just to feel better temporarily? Can you handle the discomfort of not looking successful while becoming successful? Can you stay patient when other people seem to be moving faster? Can you keep investing when nobody is clapping for it? Can you focus on long-term peace instead of short-term validation? These questions matter because a lot of financial struggle is not just a math problem. It's an identity problem. If your self-image is still tied to appearing impressive, you'll spend like it. If your self-image is tied to being helpless, you'll avoid responsibility. If your self-image is tied to "I'm just bad with money," you'll keep proving yourself right. But when your identity changes, behavior becomes easier. When you begin to see yourself as someone who builds, preserves, and grows wealth, your decisions start aligning differently. You stop asking, "Can I afford this month?" and you start asking, "Does this support the life I'm trying to build?" That is a very different question. Here's a simple example. 2 people both get a large bonus. One person sees it as permission to celebrate bigger than usual. The other sees it as an opportunity to buy future freedoms. Same bonus, different identity, different outcome. And over 5 years, identity compounds just as much as money does. Now let me give you a more realistic picture of what a strong 5-year wealth plan might actually look like. Year 1 is about stabilization and awareness. You get brutally honest about your numbers. You stop pretending not to know where your money goes. You build a basic cash buffer. You attack the worst leaks. You start improving your income strategy. You stop making random money decisions. Year 2 is about acceleration. You increase earnings. Maybe you switch roles, upskill, freelance, sell a service, or negotiate better. You create more monthly surplus. You automate basic saving and investing. Your system starts becoming real. Year 3 is about consistency. This is the year that feels less exciting, but matters massively. You keep the habits. You keep the gap. You keep investing. You avoid stupid reversals. You don't sabotage progress because things are finally working. Year 4 is about scale. By now, you've got evidence. You know what works for you. Your income is hopefully stronger. Your habits are stronger. Your confidence is stronger. You're not guessing anymore. Now the numbers begin to feel meaningful. Year 5 is about momentum. This is where people finally start seeing what was invisible before. Accounts look different. Stress levels look different. Choices look different. You may not be done, but you are undeniably in a different financial class than the version of you that started. That's the part most people miss. 5 years doesn't just grow money, it grows capability, it grows discipline, it grows self-trust, it grows optionality. And optionality is one of the most underrated forms of wealth in the world. The ability to leave a bad job, the ability to survive a setback, the ability to take a calculated risk, the ability to help your family without panicking, the ability to think clearly because money is no longer an emergency every day. That is real wealth, not just numbers on a screen. Freedom in decision-making. Now, I know what some people might be thinking. This sounds good, but what if I'm starting late? What if I don't make much right now? What if I've already made mistakes? What if I'm behind? Listen carefully. You do not need a perfect starting point. You need a serious starting point. Most people waste years emotionally punishing themselves for not starting earlier. But regret does not build wealth, execution does. And 5 years from now, you are going to care far less about when you started than whether you actually committed. The next 5 years will pass no matter what. That part is non-negotiable. You can spend them drifting, reacting, spending, comparing, hoping, and resetting. Or you can spend them building higher income, building stronger habits, building actual assets, building emotional control, building a gap between what you earn and what you consume, building a life where money stops feeling like a constant threat. That choice is still available. And the reason this matters so much is because wealth changes more than your finances. It changes your posture. When you have no margin, everything feels urgent. You tolerate nonsense because you have to. You delay decisions because you're scared. You stay stuck longer because every risk feels catastrophic. You think smaller because survival makes long-term thinking harder. But when you build wealth, even gradually, something shifts. You get calmer. You get clearer. You get harder to manipulate. You stop chasing every opportunity out of desperation. You start making decisions from strength instead of scarcity. That's why building wealth is not just about having more. It's about becoming more stable, more deliberate, and more free. So if I had to boil this entire 5-year plan down into one sentence, it would be this: increase your earning power, protect the gap, build a strong foundation, invest consistently, and become the kind of person who can repeat that process long enough for it to change your life. That's it, not flashy. Not viral enough for fake gurus, not exciting enough for people addicted to shortcuts, but powerful enough to work. And maybe that's what you needed to hear. Maybe you didn't need another fantasy. Maybe you didn't need another promise that makes you feel behind. Maybe you just needed a realistic path that actually respects how wealth is built in the real world. Because the truth is, real wealth is usually quieter than people expect. It doesn't always look glamorous at first. It often looks like discipline. It looks like saying no. It looks like building skills after work. It looks like investing before rewarding yourself. It looks like patience in a culture obsessed with immediacy. But over time, that quiet discipline becomes a very loud result. One day, your emergency fund is real. One day, your investments actually look substantial. One day, debt is no longer controlling you. One day, your monthly surplus is bigger than your old salary increase dreams. One day, decisions that used to terrify you become manageable. One day, you realize you are not the same person financially that you used to be. And that day won't happen because you found one perfect trick. It will happen because you chose a better strategy and stayed with it long enough for the strategy to start paying you back. So here's the question: 5 years from today, when you look at your life, what do you want to see? Do you want to see the same financial stress in a nicer wrapper? A slightly more expensive lifestyle with the same anxiety underneath it? More income, but no real freedom? Or do you want to see proof that you built something real? Proof that you took control? Proof that you stopped confusing motion with progress? Proof that you finally gave yourself enough time to let good decisions compound? Because 5 years is enough, not for fantasy. For transformation, and if you start now, really start, not just think about starting, then the version of you that exists 5 years from now may look back at this season as the moment everything began to change.